Around the world, powerful voices are rising, making threats, talking about crushing nations with heavy tariffs, with punishments, with numbers that sound intimidating. 50%, 100% more. They believe that with pressure, with fear, with threats, they can bend a nation to its knees. But I am here to tell you something very clear. Strength is not in the size of the tariff. Strength is in the size of the spirit. When someone tries to intimidate you, it is not about fairness. It is about control. They see growth. They see independence. They see a nation standing strong, and it makes them nervous. That's when they use threats. But the question is, how do you respond? Do you shrink or do you rise? Do you surrender or do you flex your muscles and show the world that your dignity cannot be sold? Not for 50%, not for 500%. Let me remind you, greatness is built in the moments of pressure. Champions are not made in easy times. They are forged in fire. When I was competing, every heavyweight I faced thought they could intimidate me. They tried to look bigger, louder, stronger. But I knew that power is not in shouting. It is in preparation, in discipline, in unshakable will. And that is exactly the lesson every nation must learn when threats like these come. This is not just about numbers on trade deals. This is about respect. This is about sovereignty. If one side believes they can dictate terms with fear, they misunderstand the true meaning of leadership. Leadership is not domination. Leadership is partnership. When a country stands firm and says, "We will not bow down," it earns respect not only from its own people, but from the entire world. Understand this. Threats are only effective if you allow them to control you. Pressure is only powerful if you choose to collapse under it. But when you hold the line, when you say, "We will work harder, innovate more, build stronger, and stand taller," then the threats turn into empty words. Tariffs may raise the cost of goods, but no one can raise the cost of pride. Pride is priceless. The real question is, do you accept being bullied, or do you become the architect of your own destiny? History is filled with examples of those who refused to surrender to pressure. They took the harder road, but it made them unbreakable. That is what creates legends. That is what creates nations that inspire. So my message to you today is this. Never let fear guide your decisions. Never let intimidation steal your dignity. Stand tall, build stronger, work harder, and show the world that you cannot be bent, you cannot be bought, and you will never be broken. The true power does not come from threats. It comes from courage. And courage is something no one can take away from you. Now is the time to rise, to push harder, to innovate faster, and to unite stronger. Because when you face pressure with unshakable resolve, you don't just survive, you conquer. Stand firm, stand fearless, and show the world that no threat, no number, no tariff can ever stop your march toward greatness. True strength comes from within, not from threats. You see, anyone can shout, anyone can raise their voice, anyone can wave numbers around and pretend they hold the power. But that is not true strength. True strength is silent. It is steady. It is unshakable. It is the force inside you that refuses to bend, no matter how much pressure is applied. Threats are only words. Numbers, percentages, tariffs. These are tools of intimidation, not of real power. Real power is when you stand tall, when you look pressure straight in the eyes, and you say, "I will not break." Think about it throughout history. Every giant that tried to control others with fear eventually collapsed. Why? Because fear is temporary, but inner strength lasts forever. When a nation is strong inside, when its people are determined, when its spirit is unbreakable, No threat from the outside can destroy it. It may create obstacles, it may slow progress, but it can never erase the fire that burns inside. That fire is untouchable. That fire is what gives you the ability to rise again and again, no matter how many times someone tries to push you down. I have lived this lesson in my own life. When I came to America, I had nothing. No money, no fame, no influence. But I had one thing, inner strength. People laughed at me. They mocked my accent. They told me my body was too strange, my dreams too big. The same principle applies on the global stage. When one power threatens another with tariffs, with punishments, with penalties, it is nothing more than an attempt to instill fear. But fear only works if you allow it. A truly strong nation does not measure its success by what others demand. It measures success by what it builds, what it creates, and how it stands on its own 2 feet. That is the real definition of power. Self-reliance, confidence, resilience. Let me tell you something important. A 50% tariff may sound huge, it may sound overwhelming, but it is only a number. Numbers change, economies adapt, industries innovate. What does not change is the will of a people who refuse to be controlled. That is why I say, threats do not define you. Your response defines you. When you respond with courage, when you respond with vision, when you respond with unshakable determination, you rise above intimidation. And that is why true strength comes from within. It is not in the size of the tariff. It is not in the size of the threat. It is not in the power of another nation's words. It is in the size of your willpower, the size of your courage, the size of your vision. Because when your spirit is strong, you cannot be broken. You may be challenged, you may be tested, but you will never be defeated. Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. This is a truth that echoes through every corner of life, from the gym to the battlefield, from the personal struggles of an individual to the collective journey of a nation. Anyone can demand respect. Anyone can raise their hand and shout, "Respect me." But that does not make it real. Respect is not something you force. It is something you build. It comes through actions, through integrity, through consistency, through showing the world that you stand for something greater than yourself. Respect is not a product of threats. It is a product of honor. When someone uses pressure, when they try to impose their will with intimidation, what they are really saying is, "I have not earned your respect, so I will try to take it." But that never lasts. True respect is earned when you show strength without arrogance, when you stand tall without trying to crush others, when you succeed without making others feel small. Respect is not about dominance, it is about trust. And trust is built over time with unwavering discipline and character. I remember when I first walked into the world of bodybuilding, there were men who were bigger, stronger, louder. They demanded respect because of their size, because of their reputation. But I quickly realized, size alone does not earn respect. People may fear you for a moment. They may avoid standing in your way. But deep inside, they do not admire you. Respect came only when I showed consistency, when I trained harder, when I stepped on stage, prepared, disciplined, ready to give everything. Respect came when others saw that I was not just muscle, but also relentless drive and unshakable will. That is what earned admiration, not demand. The same principle applies when nations deal with each other. You cannot earn respect by punishing others, by threatening them with high tariffs, or by trying to make them kneel with economic pressure. That does not create partnership. That creates resentment. It may win a short-term advantage, but it will never create lasting respect. Respect on the world stage is built by innovation, by strength of character, by leading with vision and not with fear. When a country shows resilience, when it builds industries, when it lifts its people and inspires others, then the world looks at it not with intimidation but with admiration. Respect is also deeply tied to dignity. If you surrender your dignity to appease someone's demands, you may gain temporary peace, but you lose something far greater. You lose self-respect. And without self-respect, no one else will truly respect you. Respect begins inside. It begins with saying, we will not compromise our principles. We will not abandon our dignity. We will not lower our heads just because someone else is shouting louder. The louder someone shouts, the more desperate they are to force respect they have not earned. Understand this. Respect is earned in silence, in discipline, in results. A nation earns respect not by what it says it will do, but by what it actually does. It earns respect by standing firm under pressure, by building its own future, by refusing to bend to intimidation. When you prove through your actions that you are strong, independent, and committed to growth, the world cannot help but respect you. Even those who once threatened you will be forced to acknowledge your strength. This is why respect is not about fear. It is about honor. It is not about threats. It is about vision. And it is not about demands. It is about dignity. The moment you stop chasing respect and instead start living in a way that commands it naturally, you become unstoppable. Pressure creates champions, not victims. Every time in history when great individuals or nations were tested, it was under pressure that their true character was revealed. Pressure is like the weight in the gym. It can crush you if you let it. But if you embrace it, if you lift it again and again, it transforms you. It builds muscle. It builds resilience. It builds unshakable strength. Without pressure, there are no champions. Without struggle, there is no victory. Pressure is not your enemy. It is your teacher, your sculptor, your silent partner in greatness. Think about it, the diamond, the hardest substance on earth, is created under intense pressure. The seed that grows into a mighty tree breaks through the soil under resistance. The human body grows stronger when it is pushed to the limits, when the muscles tear and rebuild through training. Everything powerful in life comes from being tested, from being challenged, from standing in the heat of struggle. If you run from pressure, you run from greatness. If you embrace pressure, you discover the champion inside you. When outside force is threatened with tariffs, penalties, or punishments, the easy reaction is to fear, to shrink, to complain. But that is the reaction of a victim. Champions look at the same pressure and say, good, this is my chance to grow stronger. Nations that face external threats have two choices. They can crumble or they can rise. And when they choose to rise, when they use the challenge as fuel, they become unstoppable. The very force that was meant to break them becomes the reason they succeed. That is the paradox of pressure. It either destroys you or it forges you into something indestructible.
In my own life, I never feared pressure. I invited it. When others stopped after 10 reps, I did 12. When others trained 2 hours, I trained 5. The pressure, the exhaustion, the pain, these were not punishments. They were opportunities. Every drop of sweat was an investment. Every extra push was a step closer to greatness. The same principle applies on a global scale. When a nation is pressured by unfair threats, by attempts to dominate its trade or its dignity, it must not retreat. It must train harder, build stronger, innovate faster, and prove that no outside force can determine its destiny.
Remember this. Pressure reveals who you really are. Anyone can smile when life is easy, when business is smooth, when the world applauds you. But what happens when the applause stops? What happens when the challenges pile up? When the world tries to push you down? That is the moment champions are born. Not when it is easy, but when it is impossible. Not when the road is clear, but when it is filled with obstacles. Champions are those who rise, who adapt, who keep moving forward, no matter how heavy the weight becomes. Pressure is not there to stop you. It is there to prepare you. It is life's way of asking, How much do you want this? How strong are you willing to become? How unbreakable is your spirit? And the answer cannot come from words. It comes from action. It comes from rising again and again, from refusing to quit, from refusing to bow down to intimidation. Pressure is not a curse. It is the ultimate gift. It forces you to grow into the champion you were always meant to be. Courage is priceless and unstoppable. You can measure wealth, you can measure trade, you can measure tariffs in percentages, but courage cannot be measured, cannot be bought, and cannot be taken away. Courage is the invisible shield that protects dignity, the fire that burns even in the darkest night, the fuel that keeps moving you forward when everything else says stop. A nation without courage is like a body without a backbone. It collapses under pressure. But a nation with courage stands tall, no matter how strong the storm, no matter how heavy the threat, no matter how high the cost. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. Fear will always be there, whispering, warning, reminding you of the risks. Courage means you act despite that fear. You push forward when the world tells you to back down. You hold your ground when intimidation tries to shake you. That is why courage is priceless, because in the face of pressure, it is the only currency that truly matters. Courage builds respect. Courage earns strength. Courage inspires generations. Without it, all the wealth, all the weapons, all the strategies mean nothing. Look at every great story in history. Every hero, every leader, every champion was defined by courage. Not by easy victories, not by smooth paths, but by moments when the odds were stacked against them, and they still said, I will not quit. It was courage that led to revolutions, courage that led to independence, courage that turned ordinary people into extraordinary legends. Threats cannot silence courage. Tariffs cannot buy courage. Pressure cannot erase courage, because courage is not outside, it is inside, and no one can reach in and take it from you. When I started my journey, I faced countless doubters. People told me bodybuilding was ridiculous, that Hollywood would never accept someone with my accent, my size, my background. Every door seemed closed. But I had courage. I had the courage to train harder, to dream bigger, to hear the laughter and keep going anyway. That courage became unstoppable. It carried me from a small village to the global stage. And that is the same force any nation must embrace when others try to pressure it into submission. Courage transforms weakness into strength. It takes fear and turns it into energy. It takes threats and turns them into motivation. When a country shows courage in the face of economic pressure, it tells the world, we cannot be bought, we cannot be silenced, we cannot be controlled. That message is more powerful than any tariff, any demand, any punishment, because courage inspires not only the nation itself, but also the world watching. It shows others that standing tall is possible, that dignity is worth protecting, that freedom is worth every sacrifice. And here is the truth. Courage spreads. One act of courage ignites another. When leaders show courage, people follow. When a nation shows courage, other nations take notice. It is like a flame. One spark can light up the darkness. That is why courage is unstoppable. It cannot be contained, it cannot be limited, it cannot be destroyed. It lives in the heart of every person, waiting for the moment to rise. So when pressure comes, when threats rise, when numbers are thrown like weapons, remember this: courage is the only answer. Not fear, not surrender, not silence. Courage. Because in the end, it is not the threats that shape history. It is the courage to face them head on.